You've probably heard it your whole life. Your brain is a sleeping giant, with 90% of its power just waiting to be unlocked. You've also been warned that a single piece of candy can turn your sweet child into a tiny, screaming terror. Think about movies like Lucy or Limitless, which paint this thrilling picture of becoming superhuman overnight just by tapping into our brain's hidden potential. And picture any parent at a birthday party, nervously eyeing the cake, bracing for the chaos of the sugar rush. But what if I told you that's all wrong? What if the idea of an unused brain is just a century-old misunderstanding? And what if that chaotic energy at a kid's party has nothing to do with the sweets they're eating? Today, we're putting these two massive beliefs under the scientific microscope. We're going to use peer-reviewed studies, brain scans, and expert analysis to uncover the truth. And frankly, the reality is far more fascinating, and way more useful, than the fiction. So stick around, because what you're about to learn will change how you think about your own mind and what you feed your family. Part 1, the brain myth unlocking the 10% fallacy. First up, let's tackle one of the most persistent myths in pop psychology, that we only use 10% of our brain. It's a belief that's been echoed for decades in self-help books and blockbuster films. In some surveys, as many as 65% of people still believe it's true. The idea is seductive, that you have this huge, untapped reserve of intelligence and creativity just sitting there, waiting. So where did this idea even come from? Its origins are a bit murky, but it often gets incorrectly pinned on people like Albert Einstein. The trail more likely leads back to the psychologist William James, who around 1907 wrote that people use only a small part of our possible mental and physical resources. But he was talking about untapped potential through focused effort, not a literal 90% of your grey matter just sitting idle. The idea was likely twisted and given that catchy 10% number by the self-help industry, famously appearing in the foreword to Dale Carnegie's mega bestseller, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So, what does modern science say? It says the 10% myth is 100% false. Brain imaging techniques like PET scans and fMRI show us what's happening in our brains in real time. And they don't show a tiny spotlight of activity in a sea of darkness. Instead, they reveal that large areas of the brain are active for even the simplest tasks. Over a full day, as you think, move, feel, and dream, you use virtually all of your brain. Even during sleep, your brain is intensely active, consolidating memories and regulating your body. From an evolutionary standpoint, the 10% myth makes zero sense. The brain is the most expensive organ you have, metabolically speaking. For a resting adult, it makes up only about 2% of your body weight but devours a whopping 20% of your daily calories. And get this, in children, that number can skyrocket to over 40% of their resting metabolism because their brains are developing so rapidly. Natural selection is ruthless. It wouldn't favor a massive, energy-guzzling organ if 90% of it was useless. Evolution would have shrunk it down long ago. And just think about what happens when the brain is injured. If the 10% myth were true, a stroke or injury in many parts of the brain would have no effect. But we know from countless clinical cases that damage to even a tiny piece of brain tissue can have devastating consequences for a person's ability to speak, see, or remember. Scientists have yet to find a single area of the brain that doesn't have a function. So if you can't unlock the other 90%, does that mean you're stuck? Absolutely not. The real magic of the brain is its incredible ability to change and adapt, something called neuroplasticity. When you learn a new skill or form a new memory, your brain physically changes, strengthening the connections between neurons to create more efficient pathways. That's how you tap into your potential, not by flipping some mythical switch, but through the real, rewarding work of learning. Part 2, the sugar myth, deconstructing the hyperactive hype. Alright, let's tackle our second myth, the one that plays out at basically every kid's birthday party. Sugar makes kids hyperactive. We all know the scene. The cake and ice cream are served, and within minutes, the kids are seemingly bouncing off the walls. The cause seems obvious: it has to be the sugar. This belief really took hold in the 1970s, thanks in part to Dr. Benjamin Feingold, an allergist who suggested that food additives, and by extension sugar, could cause hyperactivity. His theory took off, but it was largely based on observing just one child. From that single case, a massive cultural belief was born. But when scientists put this idea to the test with controlled studies, the myth completely falls apart. The most definitive takedown came in 1995 with a landmark meta-analysis, which is like the heavyweight champion of scientific evidence, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Researchers combined the results from 16 different high-quality studies and found one powerful conclusion: sugar does not affect the behavior or cognitive performance of children. One of the cleverest ways they proved this was with double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. Here's how they work. One group of kids gets a snack sweetened with real sugar. Another group gets an identical tasting snack sweetened with a placebo, like aspartame. The key is that nobody, not the kids, the parents, or the researchers, knows who got what. And the results were consistent every time. The kids' behavior didn't change. The sugar rush simply didn't happen. So if sugar isn't the culprit, why are parents so convinced it is? The answer is a fascinating psychological quirk: parental expectancy. We see what we expect to see. A brilliant study exposed this bias perfectly. Researchers gave all the kids in the study a sugar-free drink. They then told half the mothers their child had been given a large dose of sugar. The mothers who thought their kids had sugar rated their behavior as significantly more hyperactive. They were projecting their expectations onto their kids' normal, excited behavior. The real cause of the chaos at a birthday party isn't the cake, it's the party. The excitement of friends, games, and a fun environment is what gets kids riled up. Sugar is just an innocent bystander that gets all the blame. While some recent studies suggest a possible link between high consumption of sugary drinks and a slightly increased risk of an ADHD diagnosis, they don't prove one causes the other. The overwhelming consensus from controlled trials is that for most kids, sugar does not trigger hyperactive behavior. Deeper dive: the real, and more complicated, story of sugar in your brain. Okay, so sugar doesn't turn your kid into a cartoon tornado. But that doesn't mean it's off the hook. While it may not make kids hyper, its true effects on the brain are more subtle, and in the long run, potentially more serious. Your brain runs on glucose, a form of sugar. It's the primary fuel for every neuron, powering our thoughts and memories. But there's a huge difference between the slow-release energy you get from a complex carb, like in oatmeal, and the intense hit you get from added sugars. When you eat something high in added sugar, it triggers a powerful response in your brain's reward system by causing a surge of a feel-good chemical called dopamine. Your brain interprets this dopamine spike as a sign that something great just happened, and it wants you to do it again. This is where the trouble can start. According to experts like Dr. Robert Lustig, a neuroendocrinologist at UCSF, repeated exposure to these intense sugar-induced dopamine spikes can cause your brain to adapt in a bad way. Your dopamine receptors can become less sensitive. As this tolerance builds, you need more sugar to get that same rewarding feeling. This is the cycle that can lead to powerful cravings and what many experts describe as a sugar addiction. Over the long term, a diet high in excess sugar can contribute to chronic inflammation and insulin resistance, which are damaging to the whole body, including the brain. Studies have linked high sugar consumption to problems with memory and cognitive function. It can even contribute to brain shrinkage and increase the risk for conditions like dementia later in life. So the real story about sugar isn't about a 5-minute burst of hyperactivity. It's about the slow, cumulative impact it can have on our brain's reward system and our long-term cognitive health. So, where does that leave us? Today, we've put two of the most enduring popular science myths to rest. First, the idea that you only use 10% of your brain is a total fabrication. The truth, proven by modern neuroscience, is that you use all of your brain, a complex and adaptable organ you can improve through the real magic of learning. Second, the myth that sugar makes children hyperactive is a classic case of mistaken identity. Decades of solid scientific research have shown that the sugar rush is mostly a product of our own expectations and the exciting environment, not the sugar itself. The point of all this isn't just to bust a couple of myths. It's about learning to question the common knowledge we hear all the time. Understanding the real science behind how our brains work and how our bodies process food allows us to make better, more informed choices for ourselves and our families. Which of these debunked myths surprised you the most? Are there other popular beliefs you've always wondered about? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one, and your questions might just inspire our next video. And if you enjoyed untangling fact from fiction with us today, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more science-based deep dives. Sharing this video might just save another parent from needlessly panicking over a slice of birthday cake. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious.